In a world where the moon casts secrets and strength is the currency of survival, there exists a society bound by ancient rules and fierce loyalties. Werewolves and Lyan, a race of shifters stronger and rarer, coexist in a delicate balance of power, their lives governed by bloodlines and traditions. But not all are born equal. Some, like Serena and Nora, are rogues outcasts marked by their lack of a pack, their very existence deemed a blemish on the order of this world. For them, life is not a gift, but a daily battle fought in the shadows of a place that knows no mercy, the orphanage. Serena, with her raven-black hair and eyes that hold a quiet defiance, has spent a decade in this cold stone-walled prison. Her hands, raw from scrubbing floors, bear the scars of relentless labor, her body bruised, from the lash of Matron Agnes, the orphanage's cruel overseer. Nora, her closest friend, shares this fate, her once vibrant spirit dulled by years of punishment. Together they endure a life where every task is a test, every mistake a reason for pain. The air is heavy with despair, the scent of damp stone, a constant reminder of their place or lack of it. Food is scarce, rest a luxury, and hope a word they've learned to forget. Why is the orphanage so brutal? It's more than cruelty, it's a system designed to break. Matron Agnes, with her sharp eyes and sharper whip, sees rogues as less than human, their lives expendable. The orphanage isn't just a home, it's a machine grinding down those who don't belong, ensuring they never rise. Serena and Nora, like the others, are worked until their bodies give out their spirits, tested by the knowledge that their 18th birthdays bring not freedom, but a blade. Nora's is days away, and Serena, though younger, feels the weight of her own approaching fate. They whisper in the dark, their voices trembling with fear, and a stubborn refusal to surrender, clinging to each other as their only light. This world of suffering is not so different from stories we know. Think of children in history, trapped in workhouses during the Industrial Revolution, their lives reduced to labor and punishment, or modern-day survivors of systemic neglect, fighting to hold on to their dignity. Serena and Nora's struggle is like theirs, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, even when the world tells you you're nothing. Their bond forged in shared pain is a quiet rebellion, a refusal to let the orphanage erase who they are. Yet the question lingers, how long can they hold on when every day feels like a step closer to the end? Serena carries a small pendant, a crescent moon etched with faint runes, the only piece of her mother she has left. It's her anchor, a reminder of a love she barely remembers, but also a symbol of the mystery surrounding her past. Nora, with her fierce loyalty, keeps Serena grounded, her words a lifeline in the darkest moments. We're still here. Nora would say, her voice soft but unyielding, and that means something. Their friendship is their strength, but it's tested by the ever-present shadow of Matron Agnes, whose cruelty grows sharper as whispers of change reach the orphanage. Rumors speak of a king, a Lyan ruler named Gabriel, who has taken an interest in the plight of rogues. Agnes, sensing a threat, tightens her grip. Her punishment's more brutal, as if to crush any spark of hope before it can ignite. The orphanage, with its cold walls and colder truths, is a microcosm of the world beyond a world where power dictates worth, and those without it are cast aside. But Serena and Nora's story is about to shift. The pendant, the rumors, the faint stirrings of defiance in Serena's heart, they're all threads in a tapestry waiting to be woven. Gabriel's arrival looms a promise of upheaval that could change everything. What will it mean for two girls who've known only suffering to face a king whose power could either save or destroy them? The answer lies just beyond the horizon, in a history that holds the key to their pain and their potential. Scene 2, History and Prejudice against Rogues. The orphanage, with its suffocating walls, was a prison for Serena and Nora, but the chains that bound them stretched far beyond its stone facade. Those chains were forged long ago in a time of war and betrayal, when the world of werewolves and Lyan decided that some lives were worth less than others. The word rogue wasn't just a label for Serena and Nora. It was a curse, a mark of shame, rooted in a history they'd never been allowed to know, yet one that shaped every lash they endured, every hope they buried. Long before Serena was born, the werewolf packs were locked in a brutal conflict, a struggle for dominance that tore the land apart. Among them were the rogues, a group of wolves who prized freedom over allegiance, who believed strength lay in unity, not submission. They challenged the alphas, dreaming of a world where no one was bound by the rigid hierarchies of blood and power. But dreams are dangerous in times of war. The alphas, fearing the rogues' ideals, crushed their rebellion. The victors branded them traitors, stripped them of their packs, and cast them out to wander a world that would never forgive them. Why did this war leave such a lasting scar? Because the alphas didn't just win a battle, they rewrote the story. They crafted laws to ensure the rogues would never rise again. The cruelest being the decree that any rogue reaching 18 would face execution. Their lives deemed a threat to the order. Families were torn apart. Their names erased, their children left to bear the punishment for a rebellion they'd never fought. Serena's parents were among those lost their crime unknown to her, but their fate sealed by this legacy of fear. The pendant she clutched, etched with a crescent moon, was all that remained of their story, a whisper of a past she couldn't grasp. In the orphanage, Serena and Nora felt the weight of this history, though they knew only fragments. Late at night, when Matron Agnes's shadow no longer loomed, they shared whispered tales of their parents, piecing together stories of warriors who once stood tall. Serena's mother had spoken of a time when rogues were respected, her voice a fleeting comfort before the alphas took her away. Nora, too, clung to memories of a father who taught her to be brave, though his fate was a mystery. These stories were their rebellion, a quiet defiance against a world that called them worthless. This legacy of exclusion is not unlike our own world's struggles. Think of groups shunned for their differences, immigrants labeled as outsiders, or communities marginalized for their beliefs, like Native Americans, displaced by settlers' laws. The rogue's story mirrors theirs, a reminder of how fear can twist justice, turning the defeated. Scene 3, the arrival of King King Gabriel. The world outside the orphanage walls held its breath, as if it knew something monumental was coming. For Serena and Nora, trapped in their cycle of pain and fear, the idea of change was as distant as the stars. But change was closer than they could imagine, carried on the wind, by a man whose very presence could bend fate itself. King Gabriel, the Lyan ruler, whose name alone struck awe and dread across the realms of wolves and shifters. Gabriel wasn't just a king. He was a legend, a lion born of ancient blood, stronger and fiercer than any werewolf alpha. His kind ruled the shifter world, their authority unquestioned, their power unmatched. Yet Gabriel was different. He carried a fire in his heart, a belief that power meant nothing without justice. For years he'd heard whispers of rogues' children like Serena and Nora being hunted, punished, and executed for the sin of their birth. It was a cruelty he could no longer ignore. Why did Gabriel care to understand that you have to know the man behind the crown? Long ago he'd seen injustice firsthand, a young Lyan, not unlike a rogue, cast out for questioning tradition. That memory burned in him, a reminder that silence in the face of wrong was its own kind of betrayal. So when reports reached his court of an orphanage, where rogue children were worked to death and faced execution before their time, Gabriel made a choice. He would see the truth for himself, no matter the cost. As Gabriel's convoy approached the orphanage, the air grew thick with tension. Matron Agnes, the cruel overseer, sensed the danger. She doubled her efforts to break Serena and Nora, forcing them to scrub floors until their knuckles bled, to polish banisters until their arms shook. Any sign of weakness earned a lash, any whisper of defiance, a night without food. Agnes wasn't just hiding her cruelty. She was erasing the evidence of it, desperate to present a facade of order to the king. But Gabriel wasn't a man easily fooled. His grey eyes saw through lies, and his heart stirred at the sight of suffering. When Serena caught a glimpse of him, something shifted inside her. She didn't dare hold his gaze. Rogues were forbidden from such boldness, but in that fleeting moment she felt a pull, like a thread tugging at her soul. It wasn't hope, not yet, but it was something alive, something she hadn't felt in years. Gabriel too felt it, a stirring deep within his wolf, a primal instinct he couldn't name. He saw Serena's bruised hands, her defiant yet weary eyes, and for reasons he couldn't explain, his chest tightened. Was it pity duty or something more? This moment reminds us of real-world leaders who step into the fray, risking their status to challenge injustice. Think of those who fought for civil rights like Martin Luther King Jr., who walked into hostile places, armed only with truth. Gabriel's choice to confront the orphanage's horrors wasn't just a king's duty, it was a human one, a refusal to let power blind him to pain. But leaders like him often face resistance, and Gabriel was no exception. The local alpha smug in his authority saw the king's arrival as a threat, a challenge to his rule over the rogues. Agnes, too, feared exposure, her cruelty laid bare. Gabriel's presence was a spark in a powder keg. He questioned Agnes's methods, his voice calm but laced with steel. He demanded records, inspected the orphanage's conditions, and listened to the silenced voices of the children. Every step he took unraveled the lies woven by those in power. For Serena and Nora, his arrival was a flicker of light in their darkness, but it came with a cost. Agnes, sensing her control slipping, pushed the girls harder, whispering threats of worse punishments if they dared speak to the king. The alpha, meanwhile, plotted to rid himself of the rogues before Gabriel could interfere, setting a deadly plan in motion. Yet even as danger loomed, Serena couldn't shake the memory of Gabriel's gaze. It wasn't just his power that unsettled her, it was the way he looked at her, as if he saw something she'd long forgotten. In our own lives, we've all met someone whose belief in us changed everything. A teacher, a friend, a mentor, who saw potential where we saw failure. For Serena, Gabriel was that spark, but she didn't know it yet. She only knew that his arrival had stirred something dangerous, the possibility of hope. Scene 4, climax at the square, stopping the execution. The morning sun hung low, casting a harsh light over the town square, where the air was thick with the weight of judgment. Serena and Nora stood at the heart of it all. Their wrists bound their bodies trembling from the night's brutal chores. The crowd around them was silent, not out of mercy, but out of habit. Another execution, another pair of rogues to be erased. For Serena, the world seemed to slow each breath, a struggle against the fear clawing at her chest. Nora beside her whispered words of comfort, but her voice shook, betraying her own terror. This was the moment they dreaded, the end they'd been taught to expect. The alpha of the pack loomed over them, his voice booming with righteous fury. He called them abominations, stains upon his perfect order, unworthy of life. His sword gleamed with cruel promise, raised high to deliver the final blow. Serena lifted her chin, refusing to give him the satisfaction of her fear, but inside her heart screamed for a miracle she didn't believe in. Nora's pleas for mercy went unanswered, drowned by the alpha's scorn. The blade was moments from falling, and with it their lives would end until a voice deep and commanding shattered the silence. Stop! King Gabriel's words cut through the square like thunder, his presence a force that bent the will of everyone present. The Lycan King had arrived, unyielding, his grey eyes, burning with a fury that made even the alpha falter. He stepped forward, his authority absolute, and declared that Serena, not yet 18, could not be executed under the ancient laws of the shifter realm. The crowd held its breath, caught between awe and fear, as Gabriel challenged the alpha's right to kill. Why did Gabriel intervene? It wasn't just the law that drove him, though he wielded it like a blade. It was the sight of Serena, bruised yet defiant, her spirit unbroken, despite years of torment. Something in her stirred his wolf, a primal instinct he couldn't name, but it was enough to make him act. He argued with the alpha, his voice steady, but laced with a warning. The law, he said, protected rogues until they reached maturity, unless they'd committed a crime. Serena and Nora were innocent, their only sin being their bloodline. The alpha scoffed, claiming his pack's laws trumped all but Gabriel's gaze, silenced him, a reminder that a Lycan King bowed to no one. This clash wasn't just about two girls, it was a battle of ideals. The alpha's power rested on fear and control, while Gabriel's was rooted in justice and accountability. Think of real-world moments where courage changed history. Rosa Parks refusing to give up her seat, or whistleblowers exposing corruption at great personal risk. Gabriel's stand in the square was like those, a single act that rippled outward, challenging a system built on cruelty. But such acts come with danger. The alpha's pride was wounded, his authority questioned before his pack. He tightened his grip on his sword, defiance flickering in his eyes, until Gabriel's aura, a crushing primal force, forced him to yield. For Serena and Nora, Gabriel's intervention was a lifeline, but it didn't erase their fear. They'd been taught that mercy was a trap, that salvation came with strings. As Gabriel ordered his guards to free them, Serena's heart raced her mind, wrestling with the why of it all. Why would a king, a Lyan no less, risk so much for two rogues? Nora clung to her hand, her whispers urgent, wondering if this was a new kind of prison. But when Serena met Gabriel's eyes, she saw something beyond power, a flicker of compassion, a promise she didn't yet trust. That moment, brief as it was, planted a seed of hope, fragile but stubborn, in her battered soul. The square was no longer just a place of death. It had become a turning point. Gabriel's actions exposed the rot in the pack's laws, but they also sparked a fire. The alpha's humiliation would not go unanswered, and Matron Agnes, lurking in the shadows, saw her own survival tied to the girl's demise. Serena and Nora were free, but freedom was a dangerous thing for rogues. As Gabriel led them away, his beta Vincent at his side, the weight of what had happened settled over them all. Serena felt it most keenly, a strange pull toward the king, a mix of fear and curiosity that made her pulse quicken. And so the path forward opened uncertain and fraught with peril. Gabriel had saved Serena and Nora, but at what cost? The alpha's rage simmered, Agnes's schemes deepened, and the girls faced a future they couldn't predict. They were no longer bound for death, but they were bound for something else, a journey to the Lycan kingdom, where answers and dangers awaited. What would it mean for two broken rogues to step into a world of power and privilege? And why did Gabriel's gaze linger on Serena, as if he saw a truth she couldn't yet grasp? The answers lay beyond the horizon, in a land where their fates would be forged anew. Scene 5, Journey to the Lycan Kingdom. The dust of the town square still clung to Serena and Nora's tattered clothes as they were ushered away from the execution that never came. Their wrists, raw from ropes, ached with every jolt of the journey, but it was their hearts that bore the heavier burden, fear, mistrust, and a fragile flicker of something new. They were free, but freedom felt like a foreign land, vast and uncharted. King Gabriel, the Lyan ruler, who had defied death to save them, sat in silence, his presence both a shield and a mystery. For Serena and Nora, the road to the Lycan kingdom was more than a physical escape. It was the beginning of a reckoning with everything they'd been taught to believe about themselves. Why were they spared? Serena wrestled with the question, her mind a tangle of doubt and exhaustion. Rogues didn't get saviors, they got blades. Yet Gabriel's actions defied that truth, and his gaze, steady searching, kept finding her stirring a warmth she didn't trust. Nora, ever the anchor, gripped Serena's hand, her whispers filled with cautious wonder. Could this king really mean to protect them? Or was this a crueler game, a delay of the inevitable. Their lives in the orphanage had taught them to expect betrayal, to see kindness as a trap. Now they were stepping into a world where the rules were unknown, and that uncertainty was as terrifying as any whip. The Lycan Kingdom. Gabriel's domain was a place of legend, a land of towering spires and fierce warriors, where the Lyan ruled with unmatched strength. For Serena and Nora, it was a stark contrast to the damp stone walls of their past. But arrival didn't mean acceptance. The people of the kingdom, proud and wary, whispered about the rogues in their midst, their eyes sharp with judgment. Serena felt the weight of those stares, each one a reminder of her place, or lack of it. Nora, braver in her defiance, squared her shoulders, but even she faltered under the scrutiny. They were outsiders, their scars and tattered dresses, marking them as less than nothing in this world of power. Gabriel, however, saw something else. He ordered his court to care for the girls, to provide them with clothes, food, and a place to heal. But his attention lingered on Serena, a pull he couldn't explain, tightening in his chest. His wolf stirred restlessly, urging him to protect her, to draw her close. But he pushed the feeling down, chalking it up to duty. After all, she was a rogue, fragile, and broken by years of cruelty. Yet every time she flinched at a sudden sound, or met his gaze with cautious defiance, he felt a spark, something ancient, something undeniable. Serena too sensed it, though she buried it beneath layers of fear. Why did this king, a man who could command empires, care about her survival? This journey mirrors stories we know from our own world. Think of refugees crossing borders, stepping into unfamiliar lands, with nothing but hope and suspicion. Like them, Serena and Nora carried the weight of their past, their identities shaped by rejection. Their struggle to trust Gabriel echoes the experiences of those who've been offered help, but fear its cost, like survivors of hardship, learning to accept a hand extended in kindness. Trust is hard won when pain has been the only constant, and for the girls, every step in the Lycan Kingdom was a test of whether they could believe in a future beyond survival. Gabriel's court was no sanctuary, not yet. Whispers of discontent rippled through the ranks, nobles questioning why their king risked his reputation for two rogues warriors, doubting the girl's worth. Vincent, Gabriel's loyal beta, watched in silence, his sharp mind noting the king's unusual focus on Serena. He'd seen Gabriel face battles without flinching, but this was different, a quiet intensity that hinted at something deeper. For Serena and Nora, the challenge was immediate, to navigate a world that saw them as intruders, to prove they belonged when they scarcely believed it themselves. Serena, in particular, felt the strain, her every move shadowed by the fear of failing this chance she hadn't asked for. But even in this uncertainty, there was growth. Nora, with her fierce spirit, began to ask questions, to challenge the sidelong glances with her own stubborn pride. Serena, quieter, found strength in small acts, straightening her back, meeting a stranger's eyes, daring to hope. Gabriel watched it all, his heart torn between duty to his kingdom and the inexplicable need to ensure Serena's safety. He told himself it was justice, but his wolf growled otherwise, its instincts pulling him toward a truth he wasn't ready to face. And so, the journey to the Lycan Kingdom set the stage for what was to come. Serena and Nora, no longer prisoners of the orphanage, were now prisoners of their own doubts, standing at the edge of a life they couldn't yet imagine. Gabriel, their protector, wrestled with a bond he didn't understand, his every decision shaping their fragile trust. The kingdom, with its beauty and its biases, was a crucible where they would all be tested. What would it take for two rogues to find their strength in a land that doubted them? And how would Gabriel's growing connection to Serena change the course of their fates? The answers lay in the trials ahead, where power would be forged, not in chains, but in the courage to rise. Scene 6, Discovering Strength, Training and Transformation. In the Lycan Kingdom, where the air hummed with power and possibility, Serena and Nora faced a challenge unlike any they'd known in the orphanage. The scars of their past still lingered, bruises fading but never forgotten doubts, whispering in the quiet moments. But here they were, offered something new, a chance to become more than survivors. King Gabriel, their enigmatic protector, believed they carried strength within them, a spark waiting to be kindled. For the first time, Serena and Nora were asked not to endure, but to grow, to awaken the wolves that had been silenced by years of cruelty. The training began under Gabriel's watchful eye, a process as grueling as it was transformative. He wasn't just a king, he was a mentor, pushing them to confront their fears and tap into the primal energy buried deep inside. Nora, with her fiery spirit, took to it quickly. Her wolf emerged almost effortlessly, a sleek, agile creature that moved with a grace and ferocity that stunned the Lyan warriors. She ran through the training grounds, her laughter mingling with the wind, as if she'd been waiting her whole life for this moment. For Nora, the transformation was a release, a reclaiming of a self she'd been forced to hide. Serena, however, struggled. Her wolf remained dormant, a shadow she could feel but not reach. Every failed attempt to shift left her more frustrated, her confidence battered by memories of Matron Agnes's voice calling her worthless. Gabriel was patient, his instructions firm yet kind, urging her to let go of the pain that held her back. He spoke of the wolf as a part of her soul, not a beast to be tamed, but a partner to be trusted. Yet for Serena, trust was a fragile thing, broken too many times to mend easily. She pushed herself harder, driven by a desperate need to prove she wasn't the broken girl the orphanage had made her. Why was Serena's wolf so elusive? It wasn't just fear, it was the weight of a lifetime spent believing she was nothing. The orphanage had taught her to shrink, to hide, to expect punishment for existing. Awakening her wolf meant unlearning those lessons, a process as painful as it was necessary. Gabriel saw this, and his guidance became more personal, his presence a steady anchor. He shared stories of his own struggles as a young Lyan, moments when he doubted his strength, hoping to show Serena that even kings faltered. His words, though simple, carried a warmth that made her want to believe not just in her wolf, but in herself. This journey of self-discovery is one we've seen in our own world. Think of an athlete training for the Olympics, pushing through exhaustion to find their peak, or a student overcoming self-doubt to master a skill. Like them, Serena's struggle was internal, as much as physical a battle to redefine who she was. Her training wasn't just about becoming a wolf, it was about becoming whole, about claiming a power that had always been hers, but was buried under years of pain. Nora's success, while inspiring, sometimes made Serena feel left behind, but their bond held firm. Nora's encouragement, fierce, unwavering, reminded Serena that they were in this together. As the days turned to weeks, Serena's determination grew. Gabriel's faith in her, coupled with Nora's support, chipped away at her doubts. Then one night, under a full moon's glow, everything changed. Serena ran alone, as Gabriel had urged, letting the rhythm of her breath and the pulse of the earth guide her. She felt a surge, a heat that started in her chest and spread like wildfire. Her bones shifted, her senses sharpened, and in a moment of pure raw power, her wolf emerged. It was no ordinary wolf, but a massive, majestic creature, its midnight black fur shimmering with a silver sheen, its presence unmistakably Lyan. The transformation was more than physical, it was a rebirth, a declaration that Serena was no longer a victim. Gabriel, watching from a distance, felt his own wolf stir a mix of pride and something deeper, something he still refused to name. The Lyan warriors, hardened by years of battle, stood in awe, their whispers filled with respect. Nora, ever loyal, rushed to Serena's side, her voice thick with joy. For Serena, the moment was overwhelming, a flood of strength, freedom, and a strange new connection to Gabriel, whose gaze held her like an anchor. She'd found her wolf, but with it came questions. Why was her wolf so powerful, so different? What did it mean that she, a rogue, carried the mark of a Lyan? The training had done more than awaken their wolves. It had awakened their sense of possibility. Nora, now a confident warrior, was finding her place among the Lyan, her laughter brighter than ever. Serena, though, was only beginning to understand the depth of her strength. Gabriel's role as her mentor had forged a bond, one that felt both safe and dangerous, stirring emotions she wasn't ready to face. The Lycan kingdom, once a place of judgment, was becoming a home, but it was also a mirror reflecting truths about themselves they'd yet to uncover. And so the stage was set for a deeper mystery. Serena's transformation wasn't just a triumph. It was a clue, a hint, that her past held secrets beyond the orphanage's walls. Gabriel, too, felt the weight of it, his instincts pulling him toward answers he didn't yet have. What was the source of Serena's lion-like power? And how would it shape the path ahead for her, for Nora, and for the kingdom itself? The answers lay in the shadows of history waiting to be unearthed. Scene 7. The mystery of Serena's lion blood. Serena's transformation into a wolf of breathtaking power had changed everything, but it also opened a door to questions that refused to stay buried. Her wolf, with its midnight black fur and silver sheen, wasn't just extraordinary. It was unmistakably Lyan, a trait that should have been impossible for a rogue born in the shadows of an orphanage. King Gabriel, whose own Lyan heritage defined his strength, felt the weight of this mystery most keenly. The awe in his warrior's eyes, the quiet wonder in Nora's voice, and the unspoken questions in his own heart, all pointed to one truth. Serena was more than she seemed, and her past held secrets that could reshape their world. Gabriel's curiosity wasn't just academic, it was personal. The pull he felt towards Serena, the way his wolf stirred in her presence, demanded answers. He began to investigate, driven by a need to understand why a rogue carried the mark of his kind. Serena, still reeling from her transformation, was both intrigued and afraid. The pendant she'd clutched since childhood, a simple crescent moon etched with delicate runes, became the starting point. She'd always thought it was a trinket, a fragment of her mother's love. But now it felt heavier, as if it carried the weight of a legacy she'd never known. Together, Gabriel and his loyal Beta Vincent delved into the kingdom's ancient records, seeking clues about Serena's origins. They uncovered tales of a Lyan clan, long thought lost, who had once lived among werewolves, their bloodline mingling with those who would later become rogues. This clan, known for their fierce independence, had been betrayed during the Great War that exiled the rogues their survivors scattered and their names erased. The pendant, with its distinctive runes, matched symbols tied to this clan, a revelation that shook Serena to her core. Her parents executed as rogues hadn't just been outcasts. They were heirs to a heritage of power and defiance. Why had this truth been hidden? The answer lay in the politics of the past. The Alphas who won the war feared the Lyan bloodline, its strength a threat to their control. By branding the clan's descendants as rogues, they ensured their erasure, their children condemned to lives of servitude or death. Serena's parents had paid the ultimate price, and she unknowingly had carried their legacy through years of hardship. The discovery was a double-edged sword for Serena. It gave her a sense of belonging, a connection to a lineage of warriors. But it also deepened her grief for the family she'd lost and the lies that had defined her life. This search for identity resonates with stories from our own world. Think of those who trace their ancestry, like Americans, rediscovering their roots in distant lands, piecing together family histories lost to time or oppression. Serena's journey was like theirs, a quest to understand who she was, to find pride in a heritage that others had tried to erase. But unlike a quiet discovery, hers came with stakes. The knowledge of her Lyan blood made her a symbol, a living challenge to the laws that condemned rogues. It also made her a target for those who feared the past would fear her even more. Nora, ever her steadfast ally, listened as Serena grappled with the truth. Their late-night conversations were filled with wonder and worry. Nora, now thriving as a warrior, saw Serena's heritage as a gift, a chance to redefine what it meant to be a rogue. But Serena wasn't so sure. The power in her veins felt like a burden, a responsibility she hadn't chosen. Gabriel, too, wrestled with the implications. His instinct to protect Serena grew stronger, but so did his unease. If she was Lyan, what did that mean for the bond he felt, the one his wolf refused to ignore? He kept his thoughts guarded, focusing instead on guiding Serena to embrace her newfound identity. Vincent, always observant, noted the shift in his king. He'd seen Gabriel face countless challenges, but this was different, a puzzle that touched both heart and duty. For Serena, the revelation was a turning point. She began to stand taller, her voice steadier, as if the knowledge of her bloodline had lit a fire within her. Yet questions lingered. How had her parents kept their heritage secret? And why did the pendant, now a key to her past, feel like it held more answers still? The truth about Serena's Lyan blood was a spark igniting possibilities and dangers in equal measure. It gave her a place in a world that had rejected her, but it also drew the attention of those who thrived on control. Far from the Lycan kingdom, the alpha who had once raised his sword against her was stirring his pride, still bruised by Gabriel's intervention. Matron Agnes, too, sensed an opportunity to reclaim her power, her schemes weaving a web that would soon tighten around Serena and Nora. The stage was set for a new conflict, one where the past would collide with the present, and Serena's heritage would be both her strength and her trial. Scene 8, Political Conflict and the Rise of Villains. The Lycan kingdom, with its promise of safety, had begun to feel like a fragile sanctuary for Serena and Nora. Serena's newfound strength and the revelation of her Lyan blood had given her a spark of hope, but the world beyond the kingdom's borders was stirring with unrest. The alpha, whose pride had been shattered by King Gabriel's intervention in the square, nursed a grudge that grew darker with each passing day. Matron Agnes, the cruel overseer of the orphanage, saw her own power slipping away her secrets at risk of exposure. Together they formed an unlikely alliance, bound by a shared hunger for revenge and a determination to destroy the rogues who had escaped their grasp. The alpha's anger wasn't just personal, it was political. Gabriel's actions had humiliated him before his pack, undermining his authority and exposing the cracks in his rule. To reclaim his dominance, he began weaving a web of lies, sending whispered accusations to other werewolf packs. He claimed Gabriel was weakening the shifter realm by protecting rogues, that his favoritism towards Serena and Nora threatened the natural order. Agnes, ever cunning, fueled these rumors, her letters filled with half-truths about the girl's supposed treachery. Their plan was simple, but deadly turn. The pacts against Gabriel paint the rogues as a danger and ensure Serena and Nora would never find peace. Why did this alliance form so quickly? Fear and ambition are powerful motivators. The alpha feared losing his grip on his pack, while Agnes dreaded the day her cruelty would be judged. Their partnership was like a spark in dry grass, ready to ignite a fire that could consume the fragile hope Serena and Nora had begun to build. But they underestimated one thing: Serena's growing resolve. No longer the trembling girl from the orphanage, she was learning to listen to her instincts, to sense the currents of danger around her. One evening, while training in the outskirts of the kingdom, Serena overheard a hushed conversation between two strangers' emissaries sent by the Alpha, discussing plans to rally the packs against Gabriel. Her heart raced as she realized the scope of the threat. The words she caught were sharp, filled with venom. The rogues were a plague, Gabriel a traitor, and Serena's Lyan blood a blasphemy. She knew she couldn't stay silent. With Nora by her side, she brought the news to Gabriel, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. The act of speaking out was a turning point, a sign that she was no longer just a survivor, but a force in her own right. Gabriel listened, his expression a mix of pride and concern. He summoned Vincent and his council, laying out a plan to counter the Alpha's schemes. But the threat was bigger than one man or one pack. The whispers had already spread, sowing doubt among Gabriel's allies. Some Lyan nobles, wary of change, questioned why their king risked so much for two rogues. Vincent, ever loyal, urged Gabriel to act swiftly, to show the kingdom that protecting Serena and Nora was a strength, not a weakness. For Serena, the moment was a revelation. She wasn't just a guest in this kingdom. She was part of its future, whether she wanted to be or not. This kind of political maneuvering isn't new to us. Think of historical power struggles, like the plots against leaders during the American Revolution, where whispers and alliances shifted the tides of loyalty. The Alpha and Agnes were like those schemers using fear to cling to power, while Serena's decision to speak out echoed the courage of ordinary people who exposed corruption like whistleblowers in modern times. Her choice to act despite the risk showed a strength that went beyond her wolf. It was the strength of someone claiming her place in a world that had tried to erase her. Nora, too, felt the weight of the moment. Her warrior spirit burned brighter, her loyalty to Serena and Gabriel unwavering. She pushed Serena to see their role in this fight, to recognize that their survival wasn't enough. They had to stand against the forces that sought to crush them. Gabriel, meanwhile, wrestled with his own burdens. The threat to his kingdom was real, but so was the bond he felt with Serena, a connection that grew harder to ignore. He admired her courage, her willingness to face danger for others, but it also deepened his need to protect her, a need that felt less like duty and more like destiny. The Alpha and Agnes's schemes were a storm gathering on the horizon, one that would test everyone in the Lyan kingdom. Serena's discovery had bought them time, but it had also thrust her into the heart of a conflict she wasn't fully prepared for. She'd proven she could fight, but could she navigate the treacherous waters of politics and betrayal? And what would it mean for Gabriel, whose heart was beginning to betray his carefully guarded control? The answers lay in the choices ahead, where love and loyalty would face their greatest trials. Scene 9, Fated Love and Challenges. In the heart of the Lyan kingdom, where strength was revered and trust hard-earned, Serena stood at a crossroads she never expected. Her journey from a broken rogue to a powerful Lyan had reshaped her world, but nothing prepared her for the truth King Gabriel carried in his eyes. He saw her not as a survivor or a symbol, but as his mate, the one his wolf had claimed from the moment he stopped the Alpha's blade. The bond between them, a primal force woven by fate, was undeniable, yet it came with challenges that tested their hearts and the kingdom around them. Gabriel's revelation came quietly, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. He told Serena of the mate bond, a sacred connection among shifters that transcended choice or reason. His wolf had recognized her in the square, her defiance and resilience calling to him in ways he couldn't ignore. For Gabriel, the bond was both a gift and a burden. As a king, he was expected to uphold tradition, to choose a mate who strengthened the Lyan legacy. A rogue, even one with Lyan blood, was a choice that invited scrutiny, and he knew it. Yet every time Serena spoke, her voice soft but unwavering, he felt his resolve deepen. She was his, and he would fight for her. Serena, however, was not so certain. The idea of being Gabriel's mate overwhelmed her. Years in the orphanage had taught her she was unworthy, a lesson carved into her with every lash from Matron Agnes. How could she, a girl who'd known only rejection, be the partner of a king? Her heart raced when Gabriel was near his presence. A strange mix of comfort and fire, but doubt clung to her like a shadow. She feared the bond was a mistake, that she'd fail him, that her past would taint his future. Nora, her constant confidant, saw the turmoil in her eyes and urged her to trust her heart. "You're not that girl anymore," Nora said, her voice fierce with belief. "You're stronger than you know." Why was this bond so fraught with difficulty? Love, especially one that defied norms, often is. The Lyan court buzzed with whispers, some nobles openly questioning Gabriel's judgment. They argued that a rogue mate weakened the kingdom, that Serena's presence stirred unrest at a time when the Alpha's schemes were already sowing division. Gabriel faced their criticism with calm authority, but the pressure weighed on him. He wanted to protect Serena, to give her time to accept the bond, but the kingdom's stability demanded he act decisively. For Serena, the noble's disdain was a mirror of her own fears, each word a reminder of the gap between her past and this new life. This struggle is not unlike stories we know from our world. Think of couples who faced societal barriers, interracial partners in decades past, or those who defied class divides like a modern-day Cinderella, finding love against the odds. Serena and Gabriel's bond echoed their courage, a love that required them to stand firm against judgment. Serena's hesitation wasn't weakness, it was the natural response of someone learning to believe in her own worth. Gabriel's patience, his willingness to let her find her way, showed a strength deeper than his Lyan power. It was the strength of trust of love that didn't demand, but offered. The turning point came during a tense council meeting where a noble challenged Gabriel's decision to stand by Serena. The room grew heavy with expectation, and Serena, present as a guest, felt the weight of every stare. But something within her stirred her wolf, her Lyan blood, her own hard-won courage. She rose, her voice clear despite the tremor in her hands, and spoke of her journey of surviving the orphanage, of finding strength she never knew she had. She didn't claim to be a queen, but she declared her right to stand beside Gabriel, not as a rogue, but as his equal. The room fell silent, and Gabriel's eyes shone with pride. In that moment, Serena began to believe she could be more than her past. Nora, watching from the sidelines, beamed with quiet pride, her own growth as a warrior giving her a new perspective on Serena's strength. Vincent, Gabriel's beta, noted the shift in the room, the way Serena's words softened even the hardest skeptics. The nobles didn't all agree, but they listened, and that was a start. For Gabriel, Serena's courage was a confirmation of what his wolf had always known: she was his mate, not just in fate, but in spirit. Their bond, once a source of doubt, became a bridge connecting their hearts and their hopes for a kingdom that could change. The challenges of their love had forged something stronger, but they weren't over. Serena's stand had won her allies, but it had also sharpened the resolve of those who opposed her. The Alpha's whispers were growing louder, and Agnes's schemes were tightening like a noose. Serena and Gabriel's love was a beacon, but it was also a target one that would draw both devotion and danger. What would it take for them to claim their future, not just as mates, but as partners in a world on the brink of upheaval? The answer lay in the final steps of their journey, where Serena's place as a leader would be sealed. Scene 10 finale, Serena becomes queen and the pledge for justice. The Lycan kingdom, once a place of uncertainty for Serena, now stood as a testament to her transformation. From a rogue trembling under Matron Agnes's whip, to a woman whose Lyan wolf commanded awe, Serena had walked a path of pain and power, emerging not just as Gabriel's mate, but as a leader in her own right. The bond she shared with Gabriel, forged through trials and trust, had become a beacon for the kingdom, but it was her own courage that would define its future. Nora, her unwavering friend, had carved her own place, and together they stood ready to reshape a world that had once rejected them. The ceremony to recognize Serena as Gabriel's mate was more than a ritual. It was a declaration. Serena stepped forward no longer, the girl who shrank from attention, but a woman whose presence silenced doubters. Her Lyan blood, once a secret, was now a symbol of hope, a bridge between the outcast and the revered. Gabriel, standing beside her, spoke of their shared vision, a kingdom where no one was judged by their birth, where justice was not a privilege, but a right. His words carried the weight of a king, but it was Serena's voice that resonated most. She spoke of her past, of the orphanage's cruelty, of the rogues who deserved better. Her call for change was clear. The laws condemning rogues must end, and the Lyan kingdom would lead the way. Why did Serena's words matter so much? Because they came from lived experience, from a heart that knew suffering, and refused to let it define her. She wasn't just Gabriel's mate. She was a leader who understood the cost of injustice. Nora, too, had found her purpose. Her skill as a warrior had earned her respect, and she was named leader of a new unit of rogue-born fighters, a group dedicated to protecting those the world had forgotten. Together, Serena and Nora embodied a truth. Strength wasn't just in power, but in the will to lift others up. This moment of transformation mirrors stories we know from our world. Think of leaders like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who rose from humble beginnings to champion equality, her voice reshaping laws through persistence and principle. Serena's journey was like hers, a testament to the power of one person to change a system not by force, but by truth. Nora's role, too, echoed those who build communities from the ground up, like organizers who empower the marginalized to claim their place. Their victories weren't just personal, they were a promise that change was possible, even in a world resistant to it. The kingdom wasn't without its challenges. The Alpha's schemes and Agnes's treachery had been exposed, their influence weakened, but whispers of dissent lingered among some nobles and distant pacts. Gabriel, with Vincent's steady counsel, knew the work of reform would be long. Yet he faced it with Serena by his side, their bond a source of strength that steadied them both. Serena, once plagued by doubt, now saw her place clearly. She wasn't just a queen in title, she was a partner, a voice for the voiceless, a Lyan whose heritage lit the way forward. Nora's pride in Serena was matched only by her own fire. As she trained her rogue warriors, she spoke of a future where no child would know the fear they'd endured. Her laughter, once rare, now filled the training grounds, a reminder of how far they'd come. Gabriel, too, had changed. The king who once stood alone now shared his burdens, his love for Serena, grounding him in ways he'd never imagined. Together, they pledged to build a kingdom where justice wasn't a dream, but a reality where rogues could stand tall, their stories no longer written in scars. And so the story of Serena, Nora, and Gabriel reached its crest, not as an end, but as a beginning. The Lyan kingdom stood on the edge of a new era, one shaped by courage, love, and the refusal to let the past dictate the future. Their journey had shown that even the forgotten could rise, that a single voice could echo across a kingdom, that love could be a force for change. As they looked to the horizon, the challenges ahead were many, but so were the possibilities, a world where every rogue could find their strength, where justice was more than a word. Their legacy was just beginning a light to guide those who dared to dream of a better tomorrow.